Okay, here we are down at my table. I've already taped down my page. This is a little sketchbook that I've made, and I'm using today Posca Pens, and I will be adding some collage using papers that I've made. Here I am just making a grid on this toned paper, and it's a really nice, yummy orange red. I love that color. I love a hot color underneath a painting, and I oftentimes will put a hot color underneath something that I'm painting because I like it peeking through here and there, and this is going to have some of that peeking through. All right, so I drew a grid, and now I'm just randomly picking up markers, Posca paint markers, and putting the color down, and I'm trying to stay random. You see I'm using my finger. I get my fingers dirty in the paint all the time. I love the feel of it on my fingers. I like smushing it around. I like what it does. And I'm just going to continue this randomness. The idea today for me is using up scraps. That was my primary thing. This little book that I'm working in, it's taped into my big medical dictionary that I've been working in, but it's not part of the dictionary. This little book that I work in, and one day I will, when I finish it, I will do like a sketchbook tour. But this book is where I catch a lot of my leftovers, my scraps from any other collage that I have been working on. I use them in here, and oftentimes I will just tape the I oftentimes just glue the scraps onto a page and then look at it later on and see what I can do with it. Much like when I have leftover paint, I just slap that paint onto a page in a sketchbook and then let it dry, and later on, and sometimes years later on, I will stumble upon that page and it will already have something on it for me to jump off to, have an idea for an opportunity. So here I am. This is what I do with this little sketchbook. And I made this little sketchbook out of watercolor paper. All right, as you can see, I am just following that grid, but I am trying to make lines thinner, thicker. If I have yellow in one spot, I want yellow in a couple of other spots. Same with that green. I want that pop of green here and there. I want to move the viewer's eye around this piece. Why make such a small piece? Because this thing is probably about 4.5 by 6.5 or 5 by 7. It's a little less than 5 by 7, smaller. But why make something so small and in my sketchbook that I'm not going to frame? Because I can use this as a jumping off point to do a bigger piece. If I like this, I can translate this onto a larger canvas or a larger board. That's why I do these little ones. It's basically a bigger thumbnail. Of course, it's more detailed than a thumbnail. Excuse me. But I still could use this piece to inform what I do on a bigger substrate. I could do it on a large canvas, a big board, a bigger piece of paper, and use that and frame that. But I'll always have this as my reference. And this can spawn, if I like it, it can spawn many, many paintings, because use a viewfinder and move it around the page, and you can pick out many different compositions by just doing that. So this one little thumbnail, I'm going to call it a thumbnail, this one little thumbnail can probably get me 5 or 6 different paintings that will all be cohesive because they're all coming from one, let's call it a mother. So I have the mother piece, and then I can spawn the little babies from it, my other pieces, which is always a good idea if you do abstract especially. It doesn't have to have any collage elements at all, but abstract especially, if you move your viewfinder, just make a viewfinder, cut 2 pieces of paper into an L shape and form it in such a fashion, when you lay them on top of each other, that they will look like a square, and move it across your panel, your canvas, your sketchbook, and see if you can isolate any one square or rectangle of that piece into a greater piece. See if you can find a composition within the composition that you've already just completed. It's a great tip. Okay, so here I am. I took out some of my painted paper, that black and white on the side there, and I cut some circles. I cut some squares. I'm sticking to the black and white because the background is pretty busy. But I do go in with some colored paper. I will say that. There, I am going into it right now. But I have a hole punch. I have a couple of hole punches. I have that 2-inch that I used, and I also have a square punch that is very, very useful. It gives me the outline of the square, and then I have to cut the hollow out of it. But what do? I use those inside squares. When I cut out anything and then I hollow it out, I save all those little bits and pieces. You see those little tiny bits and pieces? That's coming from a larger blue sheet, and I am going to use some of them, not all of them, but some of them, and see how this composition plays out. I will be using little bits and pieces. I mean, there's a piece on here that's smaller than your pinky nail. It's probably like a third of the size of a pinky nail. Right there where I'm placing, those pieces are so small. And that is why I'm using a tweezer to help me place them. The tweezer, when I collage, is my best friend. I use that to pick up some pieces. Sometimes I have glue on my hands. Sometimes they're just too small for me to pick up and I'm having difficulty placing things. So a tweezer is a handy, handy tool. Okay, my brush is out. That's my glue brush. And I am, once again, using my Liquitex acrylic medium matte gel as my adhesive. But of course, you could use any glue you want. You could use Mod Podge, Elmer's, any PVA glue. Anything that dries clear will work for this. You don't want to use anything that's going to dry cloudy or a different color. Glue stick is an option as well. So I like to use the acrylic gel medium in these pieces because I have it and I use it for everything. I can mix it into my paint if I want, and I use it as an adhesive. It really works well. But you don't have to go out and buy that. Don't feel like you need to go out and buy Liquitex acrylic medium matte gel or gloss gel. I have that. That's what I use. Use what you have. Please don't feel like you need to go out and purchase anything to accomplish making art, creating. You don't. Okay, so I just cut out a couple of squares. I'm just trying to place everything. I have some squares that I'm gluing into other squares. This is coming together, and this really came together quite quickly. I started to love it. It kind of reminds me, this piece, of Kandinsky's circles, only I did them in squares, and I am doing it a little bit differently. Yes, I will grant you that. But the colorfulness, the layout, the working each square differently reminds me very much of Kandinsky's circles, which I love. I love that painting. I love all of his paintings, but I love those in particular. Okay, I've made decisions. I love when I make decisions and I glue pieces down. So I have all of those pieces on my left-hand side that are going to go into this piece. It's a mixed media piece because I am doing collage over paint. And remember, this is Posca paint pens and paper. So today I've used Posca paint pens my painted papers, acrylic gel medium. That's it. That is it. I hope that you see how easy it is to just pull out a few objects. If you don't have Posca paint pens, pull out some crayons. If you don't have crayons, colored pencils, or if you prefer colored pencils, you could do this with so many different things. And then you don't even need to collage. You can just keep drawing on top of it. I like to use multimedia. I like to use mixed media. But do you have to? Absolutely not. You do you. You create the way you want to create. That's the way art is. When I used to teach enrichment classes, when I lived up in New York on Long Island, I would tell the kids, it's your world on that piece of paper. You create your world the way you want to create that world, not the way I'm telling you to create that world. You create your world. And that's what I'm going to tell you. That would be my advice to anybody that's creating. You do you. What feels good to you. Don't worry about the critics. Don't worry about your inner critic, especially because you yourself would be the worst critic. I know I am. I am the worst critic of my own work. Okay, it looks like I'm done, so I'm going to remove the tape, and then I'm going to add a black border around it because that bleed over of the toned paper really bothered me. Yeah, see how that bleeds over? That bothered me. So I add a nice thick black border to it. I hope you enjoyed watching my process. Look what can be done with a grid of squares and some cut shapes. Any shape that you'd like. I chose circles and squares. I hope you enjoyed watching me put this piece together. It really did go very quickly. I know I have this sped up, but it still went very quickly once I had my grid and I got into the groove. All right, I hope you come back and visit me inside my studio often. It's so much fun to put these pieces together and have you join me on my journey. Remember, creativity is intelligence having fun. Albert Einstein said it, so it must be true. Bye-bye.